My life's experiences are like photographs, where dark and light, sun and shadow collide to create stories forever burned in my retina. My work in photography and film has allowed me to experience stories not my own. But when I was invited into stories told by survivors of sexual violence, my work took an unexpected turn. I began to recognize that there were many limitations in my work. Before then, I didn't know that the capacity of my heart was small, unable to comprehend the depth of love that I experienced in community with survivors. Through their stories, they taught me what beauty, redemption, and healing look like. By allowing my heart to be wide open, I experienced limitless hope in a broken world. There, my own journey toward healing began to unfold. This is a story of my struggle for liberation and the oppressed who unexpectedly liberated me in the process. My hope is that in these stories you may see a glimpse into the possibility of your own story, that hope is ever present in the midst of despair, that healing emerges from brokenness, that suffering has a potential to expand our heart's capacity for love, that liberation arises from places of violent oppression. For where there is pain, there is an abundance of joy. For where there is brokenness, there is mysterious beauty. Where there is despair, there is always hope. Where there is suffering, there is love. May these stories be an invitation to experience the world through a new perspective, recognizing that liberation is not just near, it is here. My book, Liberation is Here, captures stories of women uncovering hope in a broken world. These are the stories that have transformed my life, challenging me in the way that I live, love, and lead in this violent world. The past decade of my advocacy work has been informed by both immense suffering and unexpected redemptions. Survivors of sexual violence have taught me new models of community transformation. I observed that those who have experienced the most violent forms of oppression have the potential to become the most powerful liberators in our world. In this course, we'll be taking a journey together, learning of the ways that we can and must support survivors in our communities. Jesus calls us to advocate for justice by partnering with those whom society has pushed to the margins. These are often women, children, people of color, immigrants, refugees, the queer community, and those whose voices have been silenced, demeaned, and objectified. We must learn to listen to the voices of survivors from all backgrounds so that we can collectively end sexual violence in our communities and in our world. For those of us who are leaders, we will also learn about ways to establish safe spaces of advocacy with survivors of sexual violence. I ventured into documentary filmmaking to experience God in unexpected places. I traveled around the world photographing stories, trying to grasp this concept of beauty that I saw within seemingly broken places. I was incredibly idealistic, hoping that my career in filmmaking could somehow cast light on the untold stories of the world. But as I listened, I discovered that it was more than I could hold. I documented stories of women who escaped their traffickers in Mumbai. I met teenage girls trapped in a generational cycle of forced prostitution in Calcutta. I shared meals with women ostracized because they had leprosy in Vietnam. I heard stories of high school students who were raped in exchange for school fees in Kenya. I met girls married off as young as 9 to elderly men in the Maasai tribe. I learned that 89% of sexual assault cases involve children in Zambia. I learned that 1 in 3 women are survivors of sexual or domestic violence worldwide. Girls and women, survivors of unspeakable violence, are not safe, even in their own bodies. Many of us have experienced various forms of trauma: sexual violence, domestic violence, police brutality, war, poverty, illness, oppression, silencing, objectification, all of which might limit our ability to know what love looks like. The existence of violence and suffering in our world might even cause us to question if God is truly a loving God at all. But perhaps engaging in the world's suffering is where we experience the limitless love of God through healing, redemption, and liberation. Jesus said that the greatest commandment is to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. We must acknowledge this mandate as a common practice of loving self as we love others. Learning to love ourselves happens in tandem as we love our neighbor. But who is our neighbor? The oppressed, the marginalized, the ostracized, those who do not look like us, those who speak a different language than us, those with a different perspective than us, and those who might live on the other side of the freeway. We can experience the expansive love of God in the stories of those who have experienced suffering, poverty, and abuse. In my work as a documentary filmmaker, I was going in and out of villages, in and out of homes, in and out of lives. My constant movement required no response. I was simply hired to go in to capture the story without any sense of responsibility to the stories that I captured. As I did this throughout my many mission trips and hired projects, I realized it was unethical, unfulfilling, insufficient. I did not have to engage in the suffering long term. I did not have to sit in agonizing pain until justice was realized. I did not have to commit to developing relationships with people who were unlike me. After the shoot was done, I was free to go back home to live a life of safety. But after meeting Nikole in Kenya, I was reminded of the image that my grandfather sent to me as a little girl. While he titled the photo, "She Reminds Me of You," I realized that these stories I was capturing all around the world could have easily been mine. I was so intent on going outside of myself to capture these stories of transformation, but then I realized that the story that actually needed to be transformed was my own. For our liberation to take place, we must recognize its connectedness to the other. This is what it means to love God, self, and others, to be free as our global community is free. Lila Watson, activist, academic, and artist, said, "If you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." When we see ourselves in the other, our perspective begins to shift from egocentric, individualistic self-preservation to collective, holistic, and communal action.